And good morning, this great December morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today we're going to be discussing whether America is a country of equity or a country of equality. And I think this comes down to the culture war. But before we get there, there's some exciting news that has to do with Kari Lake. Now, whether you're a fan of Kari Lake or you want her to win or not, I don't know that that's important. What's important is that a judge is finally willing to take the case and is looking at election integrity. You know, a lot of the people that I'm sure watch my show are concerned about election integrity. They're concerned about all the games. And I think that because a judge is taking this, it brings a spotlight on what's happening, which is a huge deal. Now, if we talk about some of the specifics of the case, the judge said that, you couldn't just show us that maybe something happened, that you needed to show that, what happened made enough of a difference that it could have swung the election. Set a high standard. And they did something that I think very much points to, yes, that is the case. First thing, ballots were printed the wrong size. And the expert testified that there are safeguards. That didn't happen by accident because ballots were printed the wrong size. Now, on a normal size piece of paper, but they were printed one size smaller. That for that to happen, it had to be intentional. And their expert witness testified to that. And the defense, Katie Hobbs, didn't really say anything to counter that. The other thing is the person in charge of the election for Maricopa County, they're basically register a voter. It's different states, so I think they call them something slightly different, but same idea. The person in charge of the election admitted that the chain of custody on the ballots really wasn't taken care of because they didn't know anything but approximately how many ballots they had, which by state law they're supposed to, when they transport them from where you drop them off, because a lot of people just opted to drop them off rather than vote in person, and when you take them to the counting center. So we don't know whether the number of ballots could have shifted because there's no safe chain of custody. In a court of law, if, say, you were a defendant and the police screwed up and the chain of custody was screwed up, you know that evidence has a huge problem. So they didn't take care of chain of custody. And then the third thing was that with 17,000 votes, and this being the largest county by far in Arizona, and this is kind of the big one, if a third of the voting machines at least, 131 of them in a county, couldn't read the tabulators, and there were all kinds of issues, that was enough that, yes, it could have changed the election. And I did forget one little detail about my first point about printing the wrong size. They found, because the judge allowed them to look at a sampling of ballots, they looked at 113 ballots. 42% of them were the wrong size. Really makes you wonder what's up, who's pulling something, what's going on. But that's a big deal. And the fact that the judge is looking at it, so far things look good. Now we'll see what actually happens. We're currently in day 2, and I'm hoping new information keeps coming out. I want to keep you updated. But jumping into the culture war, equity versus equality of opportunity. We're going to go ahead and play a clip from a hero of mine, Jordan Peterson.
Equality, equity, that's worse, right? Equity means quality of outcome. It means that every single organization has 50% women and 50% men. Doesn't matter whether the men and women differ in their intrinsic preferences, which, by the way, they do. The scientific literature on that is completely clear. It was established by the early 90s. It was established in the Scandinavian countries, where they've done most to flatten out the socioeconomic differential, say, between men and women, didn't get rid of the differences between men and women. In fact, they became exaggerated. The biggest personality differences in the world between men and women are in Scandinavia, just as the biggest differences in interest between men and women are in Scandinavia. Because when you get rid of the sociocultural differences between men and women, the biological differences don't disappear, they maximize. How else could it be? And as I said, the literature on that is clear, and the way that the postmodernist radicals react to that is by criticizing the scientific method itself on
Well,
their computers, which only work, of course, because the scientific method actually.
So think about that. Well, so one of the ways that they talk about the fact that there is an equity is that men and women, there's imbalances. Now, I want equality of opportunity, meaning if we need to do things, some things different, because we're a flawed society, let's face it. Capitalism has its flaws, so does every system of government. Maybe we need to do some things. But what I want is equality of opportunity and then people to get to make their choice. And if you just listen to that clip, when people are given the opportunity to make their choice in one of the most egalitarian, meaning most level playing field, even places, Scandinavian countries, where they get to make their choice and things level out, men and women still tend to sort themselves out into different job paths and different job careers. It's a big deal. Now, I don't know very many women that want to be a plumber. Matter of fact, I've never met a woman that wanted to be a plumber or work in air conditioning. Only met a couple ever that wanted to work in construction. Now, if they can do the job and that's the job they want to do, hey, go for it. Just like the vast majority of nurses are women, and caregivers are women, and teachers are women. Again, if the guy wants to do that job, that's the job that speaks to him. No problem with that. On equality of opportunity. Other way that, well, there's really kind of three big categories. The other, number two, would be between equality and opportunity and equality of opportunity and equity. Big imbalance they're pointing out, the left is pointing out, is with race. Because all the numbers don't match. Because we do have some communities, they tend to be in the inner city, and they tend to be have a darker pigment than me. Some of them are struggling, but they're not embracing some of the important details. Like in the inner cities, the percentage of families that don't have a father present in the home makes a huge difference. The other thing that to me is a huge, actually, beacon of hope is when we look at ethnic groups, first generation Americans that came here the right way. Nigerians who have a generally pretty dark pigment. Not that I think that matters, but pretty dark pigment. They're kicking butt. Now, I would think you could call them African. Another group that's absolutely kicking Indians. And I don't mean American Indians, I mean from the country of India. They're Sikh, like the gentleman that joined me, that I hope are friends, just a few weeks ago. Or we're talking about Pakistanis. Up till the country of India was divided, one country. So ethnically, they're very similar, though culturally they're different because they tend to have different religions. They're kicking butt. They're not hung up on, oh, well, I'm a victim. The left is trying to create victims. The third and new group of victims the left is putting forward, saying it's unfair and to redefine man and woman, the whole LGBTQ. Now, I am in a way part of that movement with my Let's Go Brandon F. Joe Biden shirt here. I'm supporting that movement. I want everybody to realize how I am embracing part of that community. I don't take them real seriously. Do I think they have rights? Do I think they have choice? Yes, but that doesn't mean they get to redefine biology. Sleep with who you want. Think what I think, but you're an adult, make your choice. But leave kids out of it is the big thing. So those are the three big places where equity is being screamed about. Well, we need it because the numbers aren't exactly equal. The numbers are not exactly equal. Communist, the perfect authoritarian state in China, they're not perfect, are they? You're either part of the ruling elite, you're one of the party workers, or you're one of the peons. Nothing else. And you, unless you kiss butt to the party, there's no chance you're moving up. If you protest, you might disappear. Your family might disappear. You might not get any food. You might go to a re-education camp like the Uyghurs, which are an ethnic group in northern China. There's about 1 million of them, and they're living in work camps. And our current president has been a weak, spineless, pitiful, worthless creep that doesn't stand up for freedom, won't say really much of anything. Oh, it's just a different culture. It's okay to put people in internment camps, apparently. At least Trump said a bit about that. Was still too weak on it. I'm generally a Trump fan, but he was too weak also. China is a dictatorship. Now, they're not alone. There's lots of dictatorships around the world. And I would point out that in some ways, California has become somewhat of a dictatorship, or at least the bad aspect of democracy. If it's one party rule, one party total control, that means that you're not helping protect the minority. Minority really doesn't have much to say here in California. It's whatever King Gavin and the minions up in Sacramento decide, get together, they speak with their one sheep voice. Anybody that says anything different needs to be canceled. That's not okay. That's not equality of opportunity. Now, it's not entirely their fault that they seem to be elected. Anybody that believes in freedom seems to not be getting California better. So I'm not saying we don't have fault. But the whole idea of America was founded on a meritocracy. That if you work hard, you have rights, you should be able to succeed and be more successful than you thought possible. Not everybody can be president, but more successful than you thought possible. Now, that still happens in some aspects of our society. Professional sports. Used to be an NBA fan. Kind of done because of the whole how they decided that sports should be about politics. Nonetheless, the NBA is a meritocracy. Meaning you have to be good. You have to work hard. You have to be the best to make it to the NBA. But I sure don't see many Asian players. Why not? I sure see very few Hispanic players, American Indian players. 75% of that league is African American. Well, we could whine and cry about it, or we could go, wait a minute. Clearly, work hard. They have skills because you can watch the game and go, wow. They picked the best players. Because not all of us, no matter how hard I try. For my family, I'm a little shrimp at 5'10" and a half. I'm never going to be tall enough. I'm just genetically not fast enough. And I definitely don't have the coordination to do the things with the ball that the NBA players do. Life's not fair. But if we get equity, which is equality of outcomes, shouldn't I be an NBA player? Shouldn't you be an NBA player? Come on. What about a football player? How come there's not LGBTQ people on the NBA team? How come we have men and women leagues? If we really want to take the path of equity where we get equality of outcomes, why don't all those things happen? Well, because it's ridiculous. How many people have more than one kid? Or if you have, or just everybody that has more than one kid. If you don't have kids, look at nieces or nephews. You might love them the same. You want the same opportunities for them. Do they seize those opportunities in the same way? No. Do they have the same gifts? They have multiple kids. Same upbringing, same household. They have different gifts. One might be good at music. One's into something else. One might be an artist. One might be designed to be an accountant because they love math. One might be designed to be a scientist. All have different gifts. But if we focus on this un-American idea of equity, we don't get there. In New York City, progressives decided to cut the gifted and talented programs in schools. This is elementary and high school. And the result of that was unintended consequences. And they did that in the 90s and the early 2000s. Getting rid of those programs meant that there were less opportunities. They were trying to basically level the playing field because they decided that, our numbers didn't exactly match up. And rather than make the kids that are struggling work harder and give them opportunities to work more, decided that just give them better grades. The grades didn't mean it. Decided that they wouldn't challenge those kids. So if you were a gifted and talented kid, say you were African American, city, you no longer had a gifted and talented class that truly challenged you. Instead, you were in a class that you were bored. I spent a whole lot of elementary school and high school bored. Not saying I'm gifted and talented. No, I'm reasonably bright. There's lots of people brighter. But I'm willing to speak up. So, at least I'm brave enough or fool enough to get here in front of the microphone. But if you don't challenge students, if you don't have high expectations, Another example of why you would want equity, why you would want the best, why you would want a meritocracy. If you have a particular type of brain tumor, and instead of the best making it through, they decided that, because of diversity and equity, we needed to put forward somebody into medical school that was LGBTQ. Not that they couldn't be the best, they could. Absolutely could be the best, but I want them to be the best. I don't want them to be chosen because they're LGBTQ. I wouldn't want them to be chosen because they were a woman or a man or of any particular skin color. I would want them to be chosen because they were the best. And I think that if you were the person that had to have the surgery, you would only want the person that was the best you could possibly get. That would apply to whatever medical care. If people are put into positions because of their immutable characteristics or choice, which I think LGBTQ is largely choice, right to do that, kids out of it, but totally have the right to respect the right to, then you're not getting the best. I want competition in the arena of ideas. Equity then, because of these imbalances in our system, they're used to justify discrimination. Think about that. Equity is used to justify discrimination. Before we go to break, I'm going to read one quote. This is from Kobe Bryant, great basketball player. Great things come from hard work and perseverance. No excuses. Pretty sure he's African American. Great things come from hard work and perseverance. No excuses. On that thought, we're going to go ahead and go to break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to all of you. It's no big deal for you to just take that moment, hit the like button. You can subscribe depending on which social media version you're looking at. And if you comment, happy to hear comments. Now, there's a hero of mine that is bringing conversation about free speech and approaching popular culture, and that is Tom MacDonald. This is a fairly new song of his. I think it's been out about a month and a half, called Sheeple. I wanted to share this, so let's go ahead and come back. On a whole bunch of those cultural issues, and I think those cultural issues define the Republican and Democratic Party. You know, equity leads towards some sort of authoritarian because the only way you can get equality of outcomes is to take away freedoms. And there seems to be one party that's like, well, we believe in free speech, but you can't say that. We believe in free speech, but you can't say it on a college campus. You can only have free speech in the free speech area. I mean, how are people not literally laughing and yelling at college campuses? How are people not pissed that they're being censored on social media and the government is hand in hand? American values and freedom. I think we touched on hard work. That's that's huge. But rule of law. So you would want equality in the eyes of the law. Now, when this country was founded, we had some faults. You had to be a property owner to vote. You had to be male. You had to be white. It took some time to fix those things. I want to point out that we are the only multiracial country that largely gets along. And the left is moving us towards tribalism, meaning how you identify is the most important thing about you. Not the fact that you're American, not that we have a common culture that provides opportunity, culture that is tolerant, but instead, they're no longer tolerant. If you don't agree with the hardcore leftist positions, whatever the woke buzz thing of the day is, anybody that doesn't agree needs to be destroyed. That's pretty much the take. For instance, the Biden administration decided that they threatened all school districts that if you did not basically embrace LGBTQ, you weren't getting your lunch money. Now, I would strongly encourage every school district to find one of the fingers on this hand and say, I dare you to starve the kids in my school. Joe Biden, please do that. Matter of fact, there's probably two fingers here. I don't know which one I'd pick, but I think we could find two here that would be quite useful, one on each hand, and say, are you kidding me? This is America. We get to make our choices. And when did the federal government become the nanny state? Another example in this culture war of the federal government deciding what local control should be, what choices you should make, is have a little town called Squaw Valley, just up the hill. It's in Fresno County. It's on the way to the big trees. I encourage you to go see the big trees if you never have. Kings Canyon is awesome. And we're blessed in California for that reason. But on the way, little town of Squaw Valley. Well, they had a poll, 85% of the town wants to keep the name. They no longer can because the Biden administration decided that every place or town in the United States could no longer be called Squaw. Think about that. Government decided what you could do with your own language. Now, I'm pretty sure in China they have the right to do that. But here in the United States, really? We're taking that? Really? Now, regardless of what you think of the word squaw, this is about local control. And one of the things that's happening in response to local control, we had kind of, instead of a red tsunami at this last election, we had a red trickle. And we did win the House, thank goodness. But in the states that were already red, their legislatures got significantly more red. And those states are enacting laws that are they're essentially protecting state rights. They're like, we're not doing that. They're passing bills going, look, if you try to get rid of our gun rights, It's on. We're going to ignore you. We try to do this. It's on. We're going to ignore the federal government. I'm okay with that. Even though I know that means that on the flip side, a place like Commie, California can pass a law that they embrace abortion for any reason up to the moment of birth. Well, might have to find another state eventually. I haven't given up on fighting in this one because I believe there are all kinds of great people here. There's great opportunities. Simply have to get better politicians, and it all starts with local. So, American values and freedom, hard work, rule of law, tolerance, opportunity, equality of opportunity. That's a huge deal. And on the left, instead of embracing the idea of equality of opportunity, for instance, Barack Obama did. I don't much like the man, but I have to admit, hey, he was elected president twice. Eloquent spokesman. Don't like the content of what he says, but eloquent spokesman. Good speaker. Pretty smart guy. And he paved the way for Trump. We would not have had somebody like Trump if we did not have somebody like Barack Obama. I want you to remember that. But the left sees victimhood as a badge of honor. Think about that. I'm in this oppressed group. Oh, I'm in 4 oppressed groups. No, well, I'm in 5 oppressed groups. Instead of looking at the tremendous opportunity, finding ways to better themselves, they're focused on the tribalism. All of those little groups are most important about them. They see victimhood as a badge of honor. I'm going to read another quote. This is one of my personal favorites. It's from Thomas Jefferson. I'm a great believer in luck. I find the harder I work, the more benefit I have. Now, I'm self-employed. I work on an incredibly slow week and I'm sick. Let's say I work 50 hours. On a busy week, I work 80. Okay, I love my job. Do this for fun. But there's a lot of hard work. Find your job that allows you to meet your dreams, and it's something that you enjoy and work. That's part of why I'm able to do so many hours, because I truly enjoy what I do. With equality of opportunity, you might fail. There's no guarantees. But are you any better off? Again, the left wants guaranteed outcomes. The way to get those guaranteed outcomes is through an authoritarian system. With capitalism, you have the opportunity to fail, but you also have the opportunity to rise. I think there's great hope in that. Now, I mentioned earlier Nigerians, East Indians. They see that opportunity and they're excited. We forget that. And the reason they're excited is because they know that once they're here, they have the opportunity to do pretty much anything that speaks to them. You know that if you live in a lot of foreign countries, if your family are farmers, that means you're going to be a farmer, period. If your family are merchants, that means you're going to be a merchant, period. And not necessarily even some other type of merchant. In other words, your destiny is handed to you through a birthright, as opposed to here where there's a reason why we are the light for the world. I'm going to go ahead and read another quote. Theodore Roosevelt. If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit down for a month. Think about that. I think that's pointing out that we're our own worst enemies in a lot of ways. We're responsible for our own troubles. Quality of opportunity makes you suffer the consequences, but also reap the benefit. Equity doesn't want you to suffer the consequences. But in effect, what happens then is all of those people that are more capable, nothing to do with race or gender, all of those people that are more capable to rise unless they happen to be in leadership, which is not the American way. We have this class system here. But you can rise through your hard work, through your intelligence. Hard work, by the way, I think is more important than talent. A person that has both is truly successful, but hard work is more important than talent. Focus is more important than talent. Combine those and you're unstoppable. That's why we're. I truly appreciate all of my blessings here. I usually talk about how I got drawn into this whole culture war. It started with COVID, the eye-opening that I had as I watched friends in Japan where COVID hit first. And they're talking about what the government's doing, what's being said, what's going on. And I'm looking at our response and going, sense. What in the world are we? And I knew that as soon as they shut us down, the second it was beyond 2 weeks to slow the spread, the second, they were not going to let go of power. And in California, that was very true. People that believe in equity wanted to make sure that those of color, not those that are old and most vulnerable, those of color, Gavin Newsom talked about this, got the jab first. Let's think about that. Those of color. Now, if you'd said those that are most vulnerable, we're assuming that the jab works. I believe there's all kinds of problems with it. It's Trump's greatest Achilles heel with the conservatives, the fact that he has not acknowledged that there are real problems with these jabs. Nonetheless, kind of a scary thought. So that moved me to get out and protest. I realized I couldn't do anything. I realized I needed to find like-minded, to engage like-minded, to empower those people. How could I help train them? Warriors for freedom. So that's a large part of how I slowly stumbled my way. I got invited on as a leader of the group to come talk about my group. Got invited onto the radio, just radio. And a month later, suddenly I had my own podcast. It's a hybrid with radio. So those of you that don't know, only listen on the radio. It's also a podcast in YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Twitter. Got it. Hopefully we'll be in a few other places soon. Anyway, it has been quite the journey. I appreciate this opportunity. This is a time of year for reflection, and within this culture war, don't step up. Don't find your place. Don't decide that you are willing to discuss your values, essential American freedoms, not willing to get educated about the Constitution, then we're only one generation away from something that is truly awakened for the world, something that is truly special. I really want people to find a way to step up. Now, that could be joining Constitutionalist for California, that could be joining number of other groups. It could be as simple as you're a poll worker, a poll watcher. That could be finding election integrity project and helping out. That could be finding a candidate at a local level, somebody that you can believe. Not just the bought-off politicians that tell you what you want to hear, but you're the person that needs to step up and run for office. You know, we all have the excuse, well, I'm busy. We're all busy. But you could make a difference. I know there's people in this audience, and I know there's people in my group that absolutely step up. The thing I appreciate the most about Constitutionalist for California, I lead the Glovis chapter, that trying to make, not everybody does the same thing, because there's a myriad of things to worry about, but it's a big deal. Do we want to live in a society that is sometimes unfair? Because the equity people don't. Oh, it's unfair that you went to college and you have all this debt. You chose to have this. Biden essentially tried to forgive college debt. That's from the perspective of that's unfair. They have debt. Well, I think it's an attempt to buy off his voters, the young voters. Didn't they choose to go to college? Choose those majors? The guy who is a contractor that had to pay for expensive work truck because he can't make it without his work truck. Has all these expensive tools. Here, Biden do that. Didn't care about that guy, but that guy's going to have to help pay for the college education of somebody. Was that okay? And so that one's currently tied up in court. We'll see what actually happens. But it seems to be that one side doesn't care about the rule of law. They want what they want. They'll do anything to get it. There seems to be no line. Really concerning. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. When we come back, we're going to start on a little lighter note, something that's a little more fun. I am an avid fan of satire, political satire, and I think one of the best sites out there, the Babylon Bee. You know, you almost can't go wrong. They bring a little light, a little hilarity, I think. They tackle issues, but they do it in a way that makes you laugh and makes you think. And I think this one is a little lighthearted and kind of in the spirit of Christmas. It's appropriate. So let's go ahead and come back to this song.
Biden, did you know that your policies would drive us underwater? Biden, did you know that your policies would trans our sons and daughters? Did you know that your policies will punish what is true? The church that you subscribe to does not subscribe to you. Biden, did you know?
Well, I don't know what happened there. It was a little longer than that, but that's okay. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. That's the fun of live. You just never quite know. Anyway, I kind of thought that was a lighthearted way to play off of a Christmas song. Now, I hope that during this holiday season, you take time to appreciate your friends, family, and the greatness of this country. Because I truly believe that by giving us constitutional rights, ways to express ourselves through the First Amendment, ways to protect ourselves through the Second Amendment, protect ourselves largely from government. And if you read about what the founders thought of the Second Amendment, was to prevent tyranny, protect us from tyranny coming from the government. Hope it never comes to that. But the fact that so many people are armed is what keeps a lot of politicians that would love to simply take all of your rights under control. That's why it hasn't been implemented yet. But I understand that here in California that soon they can get away with it. They would like to make everybody referred to as comrade. We're going to get rid of all the pronoun things. Everybody will be comrade, like in a communist country. And I think Gavin would love that because he talks about the freedom of California. He even did commercial ads talking about how California stands for freedom. What about the babies? Because one of the big points he made was California stands for freedom because of their stance on abortion. Depends on whether you believe that's a baby or not. If it's a baby, then mother has some rights. Has some rights. A hard line. But from my perspective, I have rights. Gavin only respects one of the two rights. I hope that not only do you take time to appreciate your friends and family, but that think about those that are in need. You have a neighbor, a friend. You help out at a homeless shelter. Would you let charity help you find a way to connect with you? Because when I've done charitable things, what I found was it was nice that I helped out, but mostly that it helped me change my perspective. I think that a common theme when I listen to people like Tom MacDonald is that there's a right and a left, but really we have a common humanity. Forget that. We get so caught up in being red pilled or blue pilled, or and I mostly complain about the left, but the truth is, common humanity. I hope that it's that. I hope that not only do you embrace it, but you use it to form who you are. Because this comes down to changing local. And the only way to change local is to change yourself. Once you change yourself, do the change that you want. Expect things, have goals. You have the opportunity to change those around you in your family. Once you've had the opportunity to change your friends and family, you might be able to change a little small community. Get those people to embrace that change. Chance to change maybe. I believe that change has happened in some places, but in others, work in progress. The idea that we're going to create the perfect government equity because we just haven't had the right people in charge. Look at the history of humankind. Most people, what a percentage of them, for their own power and own gain. And so what essentially happens when you guarantee outcome, this individual gets forgotten. Because this really comes down to the idea between equity and equality is, do you value the individual or do you value which is more important? From my perspective, freedom, opportunity that's created, valuing the individual is the important thing. It's not just the important thing, it is the essential thing. It is single greatest reason why the world, because when we focus on the individual and allow that individual to make the choices that are right for them, it unleashes their creativity, will, focus. And from those things, we create things that kind of never seen before. It's not that there weren't inventors before, but there weren't the prosperity that comes with capitalism, focusing on the individual first, never been seen before. The percentage of people that sipping on their Starbucks, they're on their iPhone, not appreciative of anything, thinking about how, well, those cis white males, how they've oppressed me as I'm living more wealth, more opportunity than anybody else. And rather than going out and seizing that wealth and opportunity, they're focused on the fact that there's very much a connection between equity and critical race theory. So we get back to the schools. Because critical race theory says that you have two groups of people, that all transactions are expressed by power. That means that somebody always has more power. So they immediately, because they're expressed by power, they divide you into two groups. And they've decided that you're either an oppressor, one side of that power, or you're a victim. No middle ground. And so if you're a victim, that means that equity says that we need to go in and fix that victim. Well, that doesn't raise all ships. All that does is it uses current racism to further a problem. It's like, well, okay, now we're just going to use discrimination against the oppressor to balance it out. Instead of trying to raise all ships, give extra help. I do believe that affirmative action should be based on disadvantage that has nothing to do with race or gender or whatever, or transgender. It should be based on disadvantage. It should be helping poor kids where they need it as much as we can. We're down to about 30 seconds. And I want to say, please, take a moment and find your place. What could you do to make this a better world? Make this a better society? In the Spirit of Jesus Christ, I thank all of you for spending this time with me. Find that sense of calm and peace. Thankful for all the blessings in your life. I thank you. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town.